Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Split Decision. This is, of course, the show where we basically argue back and forth a couple of different opinions, and obviously the person who makes the opinion stated, the other person gets to argue against it. But as usual, first things first, we're going to take a look at some of the games that happened this week. Mitch, we're starting with Acend because one of the previous weeks, a very smart, intelligent man made a statement that every single team from Group A would make it through. That man, unfortunately, made an error in judgment,
Mhm.
and that man was me.
Yeah. It looks like there was a clear winner. I think it was what everybody expected here, so not something to dwell on for too long, but I'll bask in the glory a little bit. All right, yeah, good to go. Let's jump on in.
Okay, well, yeah, we're going to get straight into, obviously, the matches that started, and I do want to kick off with Ascend because, honestly, I am a little bit surprised with how things went. I think no matter
Mhm.
what side of the coin you were on initially, like whether you thought Ascend would get through or Guild would get through, I don't think there were many that thought they'd lose to Mech.
Yeah, this was a team that came in super shaky all throughout playoffs. You didn't know what kind of mech you were going to get one week to the other. So it's very strange to see them come through and have, you know, any sort of a performance that led to a 2-0 would be impressive. But the fact that we started out with Bind, the map that we know Ascend for, we did know for so long, and that they had been looking okay on, a mech just came in and absolutely obliterated them. I mean, even that second half pistol, it looked like maybe there's a little bit of hope for Ascend to make up that extra space, and then it just fell out from under them immediately. Really, really strange, I guess, from the expectations I had coming
Yeah.
in. This was going to be maybe a quick one for Ascend.
Yeah, I think obviously we saw quite a few drastic changes for Mech, like Chronicle now being like the consistent duelist, which I think is a very good swap. Defo Sky was alright. Like I don't think it was
Hmm.
bad, but I don't think it was like mind-blowingly good. But the fact that he's still taking space was pretty cool. I think this is one of the worst series we've ever seen from CNED, which we're obviously going to
Yes.
continue into their next series, which I'm almost tempted to do right now because I don't think we learned a massive amount. We learned that Met can adapt and Ascend just didn't look that good. The problem I'm starting to have, Mitch, is that I genuinely now kind of believe that Monster is their most consistent player, which for a Champions winning team and him being the new sort of young player, that kind of worries me a bit.
Yeah, it's worrying that we're seeing some of the old guard fall off like that. In particular, seen it. I feel like there's been a couple of weeks now where we've sat back and said, "Hey, is this the worst performance we've seen from CNED
Yeah,
in
yeah.
such a long time?" And every week that seems to be the storyline, either a map or a series. Now, the interesting thing is that in the group stages, I believe CNED was like way down in the stats, but playoffs wise, he's bounced back and looked a little bit better due to their next series,
Yeah.
so he's been able to technically do better moving into playoffs, but that inconsistency is still there. And I 100% agree with you. Monster's been a very impressive addition to this roster. I don't know that like not everybody reaching his level consistently would be a problem, but you need someone else to be there. I think Vac as an addition to this roster hasn't really impressed me. I was super excited to see him back on the scene again and put into that Sova fade role. I think he's been one of my least favorite Sova fades to watch, and
Yeah.
that's disappointing. I don't think it's an issue of Vac necessarily, but how he's being utilized, maybe I don't know. And short term changes had to be made here for Ascend. I think we're seeing some of the flaws shine through, but I still expected so much more from this team in terms of the depth that they could get out of the run.
Yeah, I think especially with Vac, it's like you see those few explosive rounds that you kind of go,
Hmm.
it's still there. Like, it's definitely still there, but it's just like within this roster, I think, firstly, one of the things we've witnessed from some of the recorded videos that even when they were winning, we said was worrying was just like this almost screaming match between some of the players. I feel like if you're one of the
Yeah.
quieter ones, you're going to be left behind in that. And I think again, we still sit there and go like, if CNED's missing, this team goes from god tier to kind of average very quickly, unless someone else fills the void. And in some of their matches, they have. Like we've had great matches from Starzo. This
Hmm.
definitely wasn't one of them. Where Zeke as well, switching over to the controller at times, played very well. Monster's been superb, I think, consistently. And then that's it. It's like the sort of almost swinging clock of CNED. Like, is he going to be the best player in the world, or is he just not going to be there at all? And I think the problem is just him going on to Chamber makes him less consistent. Like, if things aren't working, he can't just go back to dashing in the site, or he doesn't get a Blade Storm that just almost gives him a free round. The fact is, though, versus FPX, they lost because FPX were better. Now, it was definitely close, at least, especially, like, this first map was ridiculous. Like, CNED just absolutely slammed them, like, died 5 times. It wasn't even really that, well, it was fun to watch because CNED was dominating, but it wasn't fun to watch because you were just like, oh my god, are FPX just dead? Like, is this this it? Are we just seeing the death of FPX? And then the next 2 maps, while we saw the step up from everyone, I think it ended with Shao having a superb series. Like, again, he's still one of my favorite players to watch within the entire league, and they still have a chance to qualify now.
You know, the weird thing, it's not strange in a tournament, an overall tournament, to look at the stats and go, "Wow, look at that CNED, you know, he's number 2, he's number 1." That those would always be the
Yeah.
conversations. Right now, he is technically top 5 in the playoffs, but, there's 6 teams, and we're in a position where he is one of the, you know, one of the 6 leading duelists essentially coming in
Yeah.
and had one very good game. So, like, you could look at it and say, "Oh, Ascend, they won a single map, they lost both their games, and yet CNED's top 5." So, even with these weak performances, he's still nuts, but
2 of the top 5 play for Guild.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like the situation we're in here, some teams aren't playing that many rounds and so on. I don't think that you can look at that and go, "Oh yeah, well that's a redeeming quality
Yeah.
here." I think this was a poor tournament for him, a poor tournament for Ascend overall, and really a downward trajectory for the team. The thing is, you can see the bounce back further down the line with this roster, with the promise
Yeah.
already of Monster. If you can find the way for Vac to feel that little bit more comfortable in how they're moving around, whatever way he's being utilized here, you know, that little tweak could make all the difference. And this could be a team that's now dominating further down the line, going into LCQ and so on. So the story's not over for them, but this was
Yeah.
definitely a very dark chapter.
Well, now we're going to move on to, and it's, I will say this just as sort of something that I'm now thinking about.
Mhm.
2 teams that got eliminated. Well, you got Boaster, Coldamenta, Angel, Redgar. What do these 2 teams not have? A consistent IGL. And I'm going to be
Mm.
honest, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I would say in the first game, Liquid were, they were so close. Like, I don't even really want to take much away from them here. Like, I think they had a poor first map. They came into Icebox. They've looked stellar on Icebox all the way through. I think Yumpy being on the Chamber is fantastic. They go into Haven. It's such a close game that comes down to, like, some ridiculous rounds. Zipan was a god. Like, it was almost just like, I know this is dumb, but it was one of those games where you go, if you kill Zipan, we've won. Like, that's it. We don't need to really worry about the rest of the round. It was just, he was so fucking impossible to kill that you just go, and I feel like, I haven't checked this, but I feel like if I go to performance, the multi-kills on Zip, like 6 2Ks,
Yeah.
3 3Ks, a 1 versus 3. Like, it's just one of those games where you go, this is why I've been excited about this kid since the beginning of the game. He's back on Raze, and he looked fucking nuts.
Yeah, yeah, seeing him on just comfortable home turf, it's so much fun to watch Zipan pop off. It always had been
Yeah.
back in beta, and I think for me now the promise is it's tenfold because the depth that you have with having like your showstopper in there, having artists who really packs a punch
Yeah.
and has in some of these games, and then Zipan popping off the way that he is, give Angel a little bit more time as well, a little bit of a better playing situation as well. I'm sure wouldn't go amiss, and it could be literally the best team that we're looking at. I mean, I feel like every season, Tom, I'm sat here going, "Wow, if things were a little bit different, FPX would be the best team in the world right now." But they've never quite hit that. They're close though this time. I mean, they're currently sitting on just a 1 game away.
Yeah, 1 game versus Mech. So I guess we'll talk about that a
Who
little bit later
knows?
on.
Yeah.
Then we have this elimination game, and again, I feel like Liquid don't really get banged out. Like again, it's like close-ish. Although like the second 2 maps, I will say they just kind of looked a bit poorer. The problem I still have is, again, the Scream Raze doesn't blow me away. Like, he's okay, but when it's Scream, I expect more. And that's the problem. That's always going to be the problem. Again, with every single player on this team, is I go, Navira being at the bottom of the scoreboard, well, this man's an absolute tank. He can put in numbers. Like, the fact that he's below Dreamas is very surprising to me, because that's never where especially when Dreamas is a pure support player and Navira is not. That's a little bit more surprising. But it even just seemed like in a lot of the duels, like Redgar, again, was just pulling out ridiculous sort of rounds. And sure, we had both teams, like, with some insane sort of crazy clutches. But I still feel like in most cases, Mech edged it. And considering Mech have not been consistent, have not been strategically that great, I still don't think they've been strategically that great, by the way. They've not blown me away in that aspect.
Hmm.
The clutch aspect of this team has come back, and I think if you just even look at the multi-frag site, we sort of showed this before when we were talking about Shados having one multi-frag in a game and it was a 2K.
Hmm.
They look very good in those clutch situations, and that was enough here.
Yeah, I mean, they've been left in a lot of them. I was looking at some of the stats before today, and it's like I think Mech had the two top players for like number of clutches are very close to.
But
Um,
in playoffs,
Yeah, in just in playoffs, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, top two.
They were way up there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so Shados Nats. And you got Dreamas there as well. My man has put up some numbers in clutches because he's been left alone sometimes to try and pull that off
Yeah.
as a support player. And I think he finds some decent value there. And I've been a pretty big fan of Dreamas as a player. I look at the Liquid roster and it's not a problem with any one, it's a problem with the whole thing. It's a problem with the
Yeah.
the overall view of the product, and that's a worrying thing to me to look at. Like I I I don't know what's next for this roster now. Like Dream has been put in so last minute with just a couple of games left in the regular season, a couple of games into the regular season as well. And I think wasn't that
Hmm.
right after? So obviously they lost their coach first, and then uh it was the guild loss, right? When they lost 2-1, then after that they dropped Link and picked up Dream for the rest, which
Yeah, a lot of people now are saying that Link dropped himself.
dropped himself,
I will
whichever.
also say I still question that a little bit because I feel like there was no player they could kick. And okay, if Link genuinely just felt like he was in a position where he's like, this is never going to work, I still feel like it's weird though. Because he did it in a spot where there's no chance at all for him to join another team. Like the
Mhm.
timing of it was just off. And that either means that their team right now was in absolute worst position. He was like, okay, I'm done. Like, that's it, I'm out. Fair enough. If that's the call he made, whatever. But I do just sit there and go, you didn't want to wait and see if you made it to the Masters event, like, because you're not signing for another team right now. Even the
Mhm.
teams lower down the list are either just finishing their qualifiers like now, like teams making it through into their playoff stages of the VRL, like unless he's literally making a play to get on another team ready for like basically going into next year. Like what's he gonna do for the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think again, there's the question then. It might not be a purely logical career move. It could be something
True.
behind the scenes. It could be something personal. There's always going to
That
be
is
that.
true.
And I think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there that even if you're gonna if because I look at this as Team Liquid and I think, all right, you're 2-1, just lost to Guild. Just take a look back at that game. What I'm talking about when they made the change with Link, right? It wasn't like they got completely rolled. Guild are now even still performing fantastically. They're
Yeah.
guaranteed to make it through. But if you look back at that game, they didn't know that. But I don't think you would look at it and go, "We completely messed up. I like this roster is unsalvageable. We need to make a change." I don't think that's the decision. You're 2-1. You're probably still going to playoffs. They had Navi up next. I think Mech afterwards, who at that point were in really shaky spot. So like there was no worry for Liquid, really. I think they were still easily making it to playoffs, which gives you another month of runway before the games where you're going to get eliminated.
Yeah.
And if you don't think you can fix the roster in a month, there's a bigger fucking problem here than any
Yeah,
one
that's true.
player getting swapped in and out or where your flashes are going. So I think at that point, then I have to sit back and go. The question is, do I believe that Link had to leave for some issue that they don't want to disclose for whatever reason, and he's absolutely entitled to his privacy on that.
Of course.
Um, or do I believe the Liquid roster is under such fucking turmoil that this team is just disbanding? They're dropping their coach, they're dropping a player, they have no
Yeah,
idea who
yeah, I
they want.
guess.
No one knows if they want to play for the team or not. Like, I don't know which one of those I want to believe. I'm gonna hope that I hope Link's okay. But for the Team Liquid roster, I think the narrative that they've gone with that Link, took himself out of the roster, it's certainly the one that gives the most promise that this
Yeah.
we'll still see something out of these guys in a month or two.
So another question that I want to lean your way before I give my opinion.
Mhm.
Are you convinced by Mech? Because they're now in that qualification match. They're about to literally what? In the next couple of days, they're going to play versus FPX, and the
Yeah.
winner is qualifying. And according to the interview that Sue did, which you should definitely check out their interviews, they're fantastic. She's been doing post-match interviews with the players.
Mhm.
According to, I think it was Chronicle, they can go. They can go to Copenhagen. It's like because of whatever reason, like the visas, they can
Mhm.
go. So that's not holding them back anymore. Do you believe that this mech side can beat FPX?
No. No, I think that FPX should win that game. I think that although FPX struggled a little bit against Ascend, there are factors there like CNET that cause those struggles to
Yeah,
happen
yeah,
every
true.
now and then. And I look at Team
Chronicle looks
Liquid.
pretty cracked, I'm
He
just
does,
saying.
he does, and statistically, I think you're very much supported on that. This man in playoffs, let me get ACS sorted. There, he's
Number
number
two,
two
but he's
behind
played a
Durka.
lot more rounds. A lot more rounds. So
Mm-hmm.
his stats
Mm-hmm.
should be worse, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely. With 155 rounds, nearly triple Durka's, I think 260 essentially holds up as better than 280 over 67. So I'm impressed, blown away by Chronicle's performance,
Yeah.
and he could be that factor. Thing is, I think he'll be that factor for a map. And then I look to FEX and I think about their toolkit. They're already showing us off comps there. They've got these ideas with Yoru, and I think those are almost like testing phase, right? Up against Ascend, they wanna see what they can do. If you're on a breeze, if you're on an icebox, which are two maps that are likely to come up in this series. You could see those as an option as well. It means there's more preparation for mech. They've got to be ready for more comps, more uh
Yeah.
FPX plays,
Can
and
they
I
beat
think
the
that
Yoru Breeze comp?
exactly there's so many
Yeah.
things up FPX's sleeve, and then I think about them on the server right now. They haven't given me enough of a reason to doubt them versus mech. Mech have shown me
I think
they're shaky, and I don't know that they've recovered yet.
also, like, the fact that Mech beat the two teams that don't have a IGL that's the one thing that sort of
Sure.
like if there was two teams I was going to name at the very beginning that I
So
think
did
Mech
FPX.
could beat, it's probably going to be Ascend and it's going to be Liquid because those are the two teams that I feel like aren't going to be able to adapt to the craziness. Whereas I give Angel that benefit of the doubt, like I
Yes.
always will. And
Yeah, but
sure that these
motherfuckers
teams have
playing with I've heard he's got fucking air raid sirens in the background during scrims. You're talking if anybody can adapt to the situation. Yeah, I think he can
yeah,
adapt to the fucking situation. This guy is crazy. And then all the brimstone entry
hmm.
and so on. Wow, he is a
Yeah, he really wants
generational
to bring
player.
that Yoru in. But now
Yeah,
we move on
shoehorn
to,
him
I
in.
guess, the happier games, the games where we actually saw teams qualifying. I want to
Mhm.
start off a little bit with the guild match because I think that ultimately, again, we see the reason why I've been such a huge fan of Guild throughout this. I think they look by far the better team. I think they were ridiculously strong in like all of their retakes. Like, and
Mhm.
I feel like the calling was superb all the way through with how they were actually going to adapt. Trex again, just looking like super high impact, safe looking good. But Leo, man, Leo on that first map of Breeze, like these stats do not do anywhere near the justice. I think the fact that you're looking at the 11 assists, and I'm not a man who highlights assists very often. This man landed like fucking 8 shock darts in like I don't even know in the arsehole of his opponents. Like it was so ridiculous how
Yeah.
accurate those shock darts were. And it was the combinations with Cold Mentor, and that's the thing that I think this squad has really worked on, and why they're improving so rapidly in comparison to a lot of other teams. They are now
Mhm.
working on the little things. Like they've got everything else down to a T. They're working on those counters, and then more importantly, they're working on the synergy. And I think that's why this guild team is a genuine threat for anybody going into Masters. Is if they have any tape on you, you better be adapting it because whatever it is, you're going to be getting shock darted through like little gaps because you don't realize that your game plan has been given away.
Yeah, these guys have got the combos down as well, and you're now giving them a little bit more runway to work on all these new like fade combos that you can make happen with different
Yeah.
pieces of utility. I am terrified for anybody facing this team. It's one of the best iterations that we've seen, and I think we have to give huge props to Coldamanda for what he's putting together here. I think that like a lot of
Yeah.
um the last couple of months for him has been proving that he's not just some player to be bought and sold and shipped around and
yeah,
he'll
yeah,
just go
yeah.
down to the VRLs and try and survive there or whatever. This guy is going on to another team that I don't think at the start of this season um or at least when he joined up, I wouldn't look at and go, okay, yeah, they are going to be the team that qualifies. Be like, yeah, they maybe make playoffs. They could have a
Yeah.
decent run, maybe if they have a good tournament. But now I'm looking at them and it's not. oh yeah, safe just went insane, and this guy got
Yeah,
this many frags, CNED with 90
the team
kills.
was feeling
Like,
it, you know?
yeah, stop. This is a team that is just so well regimented right now that
Yeah.
it's difficult. I don't think there's an easy way to beat them. Put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I think that upper bracket game is actually going to be quite exciting. Now, the other team that, no surprise, made it straight through. Interesting that both teams that finished top in their group also went straight through, by the way, because I feel like that doesn't actually happen as often as you might think it would. Fnatic,
Hmm.
Durka, still an absolute god. Alfia alongside with him. I think it personally for me, this is the best performance I've ever seen from Enzo. Like I genuinely think that was a what like even the map they lost. I think it was Ascent, right? His like holds was filth. And then I'm gonna do this just for Mitch and for no other reason. There you go. He's at the top of the board right now because
Thank
I
you.
sorted by KD. The man
Thank you.
just didn't die either.
Thank you.
Like it. The thing is, I just think that this roster, like, I expected Enzo to come in and be good. He came in and is
Hmm.
actually fragging better than we've ever seen him. I like in any other squad, and I think that it fits incredibly well for all of the players. The synergy seems very good. We had Mystic having a worldy of a couple of maps. I think that was also Ascent as well, where I was just like, at any moment, any player on this team can genuinely pop off.
Hmm.
And sure, FPX went the distance, but I don't know if there was ever a point in my mind where I doubted Fnatic would win this series. And that's
Hmm.
especially versus a team as good as FPX, who are so adaptable and are so strong in these sort of positions. To give them that level of credit, I think just shows how good this team are right now.
Yeah, I'll say I very much enjoyed casting this game. It was a lot of fun. I remember like a bunch of moments, and in particular, you talked about Enzo's KD, his side holds fracture. Over towards that A side, he was down below. He was in
Yeah,
trouble. There's like
I
15
sent B
seconds
site as
left.
well. He was
Picks up a
nuts on both.
4K. Yeah, exactly. It was just a shutdown. It felt like he had it under control from the
Yeah.
from the get-go, and impressive to do that against FPX. I think I agree with you there. Probably the best game we've seen out of the dude. But Mystic, I heard a lot of props given to Mystic, but he wasn't in that MVP vote, Tom. He didn't make it there, and it
It
was
is hard to make
crazy.
the cut in this game. Like
It
that's the
is
thing.
apparently, and
I feel like if you look at the stats, like you are gonna put the other three in, and I can't really blame. That's the thing. I
you
also
look at the stats.
find it hard to remove any of those three as well. Like I think Althea for Althea standards maybe could have gone out of there,
I
but at
agree.
the same time, ultimately, I think the map where Mystic was the best is the map they lost. So if you're then
Yeah,
looking at the maps where they
true.
won, Althea was nuts. Althea was pretty good, and Mystic, well, he was playing Breach. I don't really know if you can expect
Yeah.
crazy stats on a Breach, but I
The
think
thing,
that's a good problem to have though. Is like
yeah.
we had
Which
multiple
one of
people
them?
that could have been an MVP. That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
thing.
Why did we have four people who could be MVP? God
Why
damn
don't you
it!
put them all
Poor
in?
Boaster, man. He tried his best. He had a good game as well. I think he was he was pretty good statistically.
Yeah.
It was okay. Thing is though, I was gonna say Mystic almost got them Ascent. It was like 9-8 or 8-7. I can't remember. They were around behind. And Mystic clutched out the round 1v4. He's flashing into spawn like he killed Durka with the first flash
Mm.
peek, and he goes in again. They're on the attack, like pushed up through mid, and that got them to equalized. It wrecked FPX's economy, and then it gave them a chance to fight right back into the game. I think that Mystic, in terms of the rounds where he stepped up as well, was so important on that map to again give them a good chance. They went to OT.
Mm.
You don't always get them connected, but that could have been a 2-0. And if it ended there and then, I don't think there would have been a name on that board that wasn't Mystic. So I think that certainly I'm glad that the community stepped up and said, even though we had the vote, and the vote was kind of close as well. Enzo won,
Yeah.
Enzo won, but it is what it is. Um, Casters might have swayed that decision a little bit. I don't know about that, but who
Costa.
knows? Who knows?
Costa.
Who knows? I think Tom said something. He told people to
Did
vote
I?
or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think like the comments were just filled with praise for Mystic as well. And that's fantastic to see that the community is not going to sit there and, obviously there's like, where's Mystic? Where's Mystic? But I read that in kind of a good way. It's just like,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
people give a shit. And that's the best. Like when we started out this Valorant journey 2 years ago, to think we could put out an MVP vote after a game and you would have three choices and people would be going crazy for that fourth one, going, why
Mm.
isn't he in here? Like that's huge. And just seeing the community grow to that stage, it really warms my little heart.
So I want to go into like we kind of touched on this FPX Mech game. I think that Again, it's probably going to be a close one. The thing that I do worry about, especially for mech standpoint, is that FPX have shown they can play like some of the stronger maps, like Breeze and stuff like that. So I do
Mhm.
kind of think that, like, obviously, I don't want to ever see Angel play Yoru again on Icebox. I hated that maybe more than anything I've ever seen.
There's some good
Mainly just
ideas.
because it was like the ideas were good, but it just seemed like the follow up wasn't there. And I also
I
feel
agree.
like in one of the like the match versus Fnatic in particular, this is gonna sound kind of dumb, but I feel like they played the maps where Zipan doesn't shine. Like they played the maps where ultimately he is not playing his Raze, where I think he's an absolute superstar on every single map that happens. And I would
Mhm.
almost love them to almost switch things up and play more of a Fnatic style comp for Fracture, just to give that man some opening to just go wild. Because I think he can, and I think especially in games versus Mech, you need Zipan on form. I don't think you can allow someone like Chronicle to just frag out on the server. I do think that FPX will take it though. I think like I still think it's like a 60-40 game, but I think FPX have proven that they are the better team overall, and ultimately I still don't believe that Mech are completely back yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just a little bit too shaky. And FPX, they've looked good. The game versus Fnatic was solid, and they've got the the current form as an
Yeah.
advantage over Mech. So it's hard to really pin Mech as favorites. But I agree with you as well that I don't expect it to be like a 13-7, 13-8 kind of game. If it doesn't go to double digits and or at least a close enough match,
Or double digits
I'll
in the
be
twos.
surprised. All right, now listen, you don't need to do that. This is the fifth and final episode of Split Decision coming to you live.
uh, the other game as well, like obviously once it gets to this stage, everyone is qualified, but this number one spot has value. Like number two and
Mhm.
three, it's still luck. Like we've seen it before where number two and three for EMEA are in the same fucking group. So I'm not gonna sit here and
Yeah.
pretend like two and three can make a huge difference. I don't know if it will. We'll see. Number one is huge though, because if you, I think you
Yep.
do still skip a stage from what we know, and any team would take that. I will say there is a part of me that thinks that for Guild and actually Fnatic, playing through that lower stage will help quite a bit. I think for FPX maybe
Really?
not, because I think especially they're going to have one standing minimum. Angel's not going to be there, so even just having time to break down and look at what all the other teams are doing, I think will help FPX more than maybe playing themselves good. Then again, if they have a stand-in, that stand-in might need time, so I guess there's no real good way of looking at things. But this game, I still favor Fnatic. I also don't think either team is. I don't want to say they're not going to try, but I don't know if they're not going to show as much, because I think every single team is actually quite happy to play through that lower bracket stage, or like the initial stage.
Yeah, I feel like when you look at the position that we're in, the unknown is the real problem. Like for the teams coming into this,
Yeah.
I spoke with a couple of them and said, do you know what happens if you get first seed? Like off the record, like for me, do you know? Please help. And they were like, no, we haven't got a clue. So from their perspective, it's like you got to fight for it because if you
Yeah.
don't, and then it ends up being something great, and you're sat there at Masters going, shit, I wish we were first. I wish we didn't play Yoru, Fade, Raze, like go for
Yeah.
some crazy neon in there as well. Got a Reina. Um, I think this is something that teams don't want to be sat there kicking themselves.
Well, like last time, I guess. Especially
Eh,
for a team like Fnatic. They were the ones that would have benefited more than
huge,
anyone if they had managed to finish
huge.
first. And I think they were in a
Look
position
look
last
at the
time where they
teams that
should
we
have done.
have. Look at the teams that we have. If we
Yeah.
if we say Mech are going down, Fnatic, Guild, FPX, I think now all three of those teams benefit greatly from having an extra week.
Yeah.
I know that MCE, for example, has said many times over on Valoranting that he's not a fan of it. He did not appreciate the extra week. He'd rather play the group stage to get that warmed up feeling. And
But he has a
that's
young team. I think it's a young team and new
it's
in-game
down
leader.
to
I
the
think
team,
it's
man. That's
yeah,
exactly it. It's like there's no right or wrong answer. There's gonna come a point where you're gonna have one team that's like, shit, I want to be first because I want to skip that week, and the other two teams are like,
yeah.
all right, you go ahead. Hey, I'll open the let me hold the door. Go on in. Oh, we've picked our Instaban. Oh no, silly us. Like, some stuff like that's gonna happen. So I think
Hmm.
right now, uh, with the teams we've got left in it, barring Mech, I think those three will be 100% wanting that week skip. I'd say even Mech probably
Yeah.
do just to get themselves back on their feet.
Right. Well, I think it's about time. We've talked about what happened last week. We've
Let's
even
do it.
given a slight idea of what we think is going to happen next week. It's time to get into split decisions. Now, for anybody who hasn't watched this before, the concept is each of us have brought a couple of statements with us today. We're going to say them, and then the other person gets to choose which side of the argument that they are on. Now, the twist is, of course, that the other person may then have to argue against their own statement, and it's basically a big game of chess to try and bait the other person into saying what you don't want to argue. And then it's down to you in the comments to basically say whether you agree with us or you think we're the stupidest people on the planet. And I'll be honest, there has been somewhat of a mix with a lot of those things. I think the Link one especially, where I was like, it was an awful decision. A lot of people are like, yeah, but he left himself. And I'm like, maybe he did. But either way, Mitch, do you want to go first or do you want to go second? I'll give you the choice again.
Oh, you're so kind to me, Tom. I don't remember what I chose last time, so I'm going to choose first.
I think you always choose first.
Well, then maybe next time I'll choose second. Probably not.
No.
Statistically. So I'm going to kick things off. This is a little bit of an easy one, right? We're coming into playoffs.
Okay.
I'm going to throw you some
I like
softballs
easy
here.
ones.
So we're going to say that FPX in their coming series are going to be playing Yoru.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, I think they will. And the only reason I think that is because both teams abso-fucking-lutely love playing Breeze. And their Breeze comp has been nuts. So I think that I'd be very surprised if they changed it. Obviously, there's the possibility that Mech could counter that, but I also think that Mech aren't the best team in the world at countering people. I think they're very good at playing their own game. I think they're very good at individual sort of plays, and although they've been switching their comps up a bit, I don't know if there's many teams right now that can really counter that Yoru play on that specific map. So, yeah, I do think the FPX are going to play Yoru.
All right. I mean, look, I can certainly see your perspective, but I'm going to have to argue against Tom. It's a simple moral issue. Of course, my code tells me I'm going to have to go the other way. I'm going to start by saying that we know that Mech are a very slow defaulty team, and we know that Angel, so far from what we've seen from Yoru, wants to try and take space. One of the key issues is being he doesn't have anything to follow up on it from what you said earlier. And I think I'd agree with that to a large extent. They send him out to try and find his own space. There is a lot of misinformation there. I'm thinking back to Icebox, where you would constantly see him throw out utility like his decoy, or he'd flash an angle just to pull that like off the angle, or get Durka to TP back or something like that on the chamber. So that was kind of useful for like getting them into some nooks and crannies, crossing some angles with his gate crash to start the round. And then the executions where he goes into site, flashes, and tries to open the space. I've liked that. But when I think about that playstyle against Mech, a team that are known to be able to run that clock down, slow down, default, and go, hey, you make a move, we're ready. Right. We're gonna catch you when you do. We're patient as hell. We'll just stare at my screen for the next, minute 40 and not move a muscle until you make a move. And inevitably, someone does. You play up against a Yoru, I think they're going to get a lot of those opportunities. The question is whether they're ready for it. And I think they probably are. Looking at the fact that we've seen this team on multiple maps now start to adapt some of their comms. They're pushing in Neon, kind of going out there into a very different play style than what they've went with before. When I think of that, that sort of spurs me on to believe that this team has practiced with a Yoru. They've thought about it at least. If you're going to massively shift your comp for speed and for extra entry potential, it looks like Yoru at the moment is at least going to be a consideration for a moment. And if they've done even the bare minimum of thought into that, I think it's something that, like we've seen from Fnatic just last week, that you can sort of, if you know what they want to do with it, you can plan for that and you can deal with it very easily. And so far, unless there's a big change from FPX and how they're going to play their Yoru, I think it's more likely they go back to some of the comps they showed us during the group stages on Breeze, on Icebox, which, as I said earlier, I think are going to be in the series.
I'd agree on every map other than Breeze. I think that they've now tried it multiple times in a row.
You could be right.
And both times...
Same team, though. It's Acend. It was against... and
but
Acend
if anything,
couldn't
that's
adapt with
worse.
no IGL.
Because Acend couldn't adapt, but they were also expecting that composition. Because they literally saw it last time and still lost. If anything, I don't know. It was worse the second time.
Yeah, that was a Sova buff, man. What can I say?
I think also just that I think the fact that it's super fast paced makes it so much more difficult. For a team like Mech, sure they can thrive in the chaos, but ultimately they're very good at running the clock down. And I'm going to be interested to see how they deal with a team basically just running at them the whole time, because there's a lot of strong individual players, and ultimately for Angel, his role within that is to almost sacrifice himself. Like, he's trying to create these pincer confusion moments, and I don't know. I think if Breeze comes up, which I'd be gobsmacked if it doesn't, because both teams love that map, I think he's going to play a little bit of Yoru.
Yeah,
My
certainly
my
see it.
first one. I'm not sure whether I should do this as my first one because it's quite it's a little no, actually it's very toxic.
Go on, you gotta do it now. You can't tease it
Okay,
like that. Come
so
on.
it's about Team
Toxic.
Liquid.
Okay.
Allowing Sliggy to leave is the worst org decision that has been made in Valorant.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I didn't know you were going with softballs as well. Jeez, yes, of course it was. I couldn't agree more. I think Sliggy. When I look at some of the greatest minds that we have in Valorant right now, Sliggy's
Mm,
top of that list, and I think he's shown with the amount of just crazy comp switches and risks that this team has taken, not just on the server. I'm talking even with the people they've picked up. How Yumpy swapping over to this game was a fucking wild decision, and it worked out. I'm glad that it did. But at the time, we were all scratching our heads thinking these guys are absolutely off the rocker. Like, he's cracked, but like he doesn't even know the game. He came in, he's like learning the agents a few days before the tournament. It's wild. I know he'd been playing a little bit and stuff, but like the Killjoy rundown with the op, those new ideas worked out. Now I got to say, when I, I don't know, I cannot imagine a team that uh, loses Sliggy and looks
yeah,
better, right? I find that tough, but I can accept that there's other play styles out there. I can accept that there is going to be a world where you get the top 10 teams and a certain coach might only fit two. He might only fit three. Hell, he might not fit any of them, but could be a number one coach with the number 11 team, for example. I
yeah.
get that. But what I'll say in this situation is that the results are showing pretty clearly that it was a shit decision because you lose Sliggy, roster turns to shit afterwards. Link is leaving. Don't know what happened there. Might not be related, sure. But even still, after Sliggy left, I don't think this team looked necessarily better. Now with Dreamus on, I sure would love to have someone like Sliggy sort of incorporating that new player, especially without having that primary IGL. So yeah, I think taking out your coach when you don't have an IGL and the coach is doing all the legwork for the team, probably not the best of choices. Curious to
Mm.
see what you had
See,
planned because you didn't think
so
I'd say no.
see, this is the thing. The reason I specified it's the worst decision in Valorant, like ever, is because I'm now going to try and name something that I think was worse. And that's why it's a sort of a trick, because I do agree that this
Mm,
decision was a fucking awful one.
okay.
But the removal of Zeke from G2 handed Acend champions. There is no worse decision than that. That's why this was a bait. Because ultimately, even though, like, I think that was also a swap deal. And don't get me wrong, the swap didn't go too badly, but it's more what you gifted to the other side. Zeke was part of the best team of champions. They won it. They won it in fairly strong fashion. They beat the team I think was the best team of the year, which was Mech. And all of that was made possible by G2 giving them Zeke. Because Zeke, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was also the MVP. Like, he had a
So.
magnificent performance at Champions. Now, although directly at the time, I don't think anybody could really say it was a terrible decision, it was definitely a bad one. And also, you could argue as well that G2's removal of Cold Amenta later was also a worse decision because the team since then has been bad. Like, Liquid's performances, I won't say have been better, but they have still managed to at least get themselves to playoffs. G2, after removing Cold Amenta, basically just went on some weird sort of back and forth of playing different players. They played without an IGL, and then they went 1-4 in the league. So those are, I think the Cold Amenta one might be on a par, but then you can also say they gave him to Guild, who went on to qualify for the next one. So they've also sort of handed them a nice little cherry on top as well. So I think that the Sliggy decision is definitely not a good one. There's no argument there. But in my opinion, Zeke leaving G2 was the worst decision ever in Valorant.
Shit. Well, the claws are out, I guess. I didn't know we were playing this dirty, but
Got baited.
yeah, no, I knew. It's just like that's such an easy question that
Yeah.
You had something up your sleeve. I'm again gonna hit like a nice, I'm not an asshole. So here's a nice one.
I am.
I'm gonna say that before LCQ, we're gonna see Acend make some roster changes. That's my next statement.
Hmm. No. I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that they should, because I'm not sure if the team's definitely in the best of spots, but I don't think they will. I think that firstly the team was close, and I think I believe, and I think they believe as well, that on the right day they would have qualified. I don't think that's anything mind-blowing. They lost to Mech doing Mech BS as usual, and then they got eliminated by, I think, the second strongest team in all of EMEA, and one of the most adaptive teams at that. So I do think that there's work to be done. I do think that implementing the team is going to be very important. The problem is I'm sat here with the sort of the Team Liquid mentality of who the fuck do you remove? Because you're not removing CNED. Let's get that off the table right away. If you remove CNED, no one cares about Acend anymore. I know that's harsh, but that's like 75% of your fan base gone, and he is also your best player. Starzo's currently IGLing and has done pretty well. I think he's IGLing. It's either him or Vac. And I think he's done quite well individually. Again, Zeke is a Champions MVP, in case I didn't make that clear in the last one. Monster has been your best player, and Vac is trying to glue everything together in some weird shitstorm that he's found himself in. I don't also think you can get anyone better right now. The only argument I could see is Link. And Link has already gone from one team that has no IGL and left. He's not going to go to another one. Well, maybe he will. Maybe if the dollar, maybe you never know. Maybe if it's right, but I don't know if Acend would pay better than Liquid anyway. So, realistically, unless you have found another Alpha just chilling and he happens to be the best in-game leader of all time, I don't know who they can bring in that would be better.
Well, I can maybe shed some light not on who to bring in, but on where that replacement will be. Because look, this team's already
you
shown.
gotta name me who.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me just pull up my scouting list. Acend, are you listening? So you should probably look at this. Let me put the emails up on screen as well. Look, I think that this team's already shown that they're willing to make some roster changes recently. That's abundantly clear. Now, problem with that, 2 players already gone. So points at risk if you make any more changes potentially. I don't know their exact situation, but I know that's certainly going to be at consideration. If that's the case, it may lean towards it being one of the newer additions, which is Monster. Not a fucking chance. If Acend drop Monster,
you'd be mad.
I will fly to wherever their HQ is, and I will start a protest outside of it for however many days it takes to get Monster back on that fucking roster. And Acend, if you now remove him to spite me, we will have a problem. If you make a
you're almost as big a fan of Monster as you were Beast.
All right. Wow. So already made some changes. Not looking at Monster, but maybe looking at Vac. I mean, if you can find an IGL who's filling that role right now, and it fucking pains me to say it, man, but this team did not have good results. I don't think they can go into LCQ happy with the current system, happy with what they've got right here, right now. So they're going to try to pivot that. Now, you can pivot that without changing a roster. Hell, you should pivot that without changing a roster 9 times out of 10. Vac's the lowest rated Sova, lowest rated Fade. Those are the 2 agents he came into this roster to play. I don't think necessarily that, if he's taking on IGL responsibilities, maybe it can be different. New team, extra bit of runway, polish up some stuff, maybe it can look better. But right here, right now, I look at this team, I think what they did right here, they're not going to be happy with. They're not going to go into LCQ thinking, all right, we can do it. If we just, run this again, we got unlucky. That's not the case. And I think at this very moment, they will be desperately wanting an IGL or an improvement in those categories. So it's whichever one is easier. And I think it comes down to free agency, down to teams that haven't made it, that maybe their IGL goes, ooh, I'd love to just stand in for champs, just jump on a team real quick when I'm going to Masters over here real quick. Like, I don't know. I think that there's a strong possibility for Acend to make that roster change in the coming weeks. It really just comes down to who is available.
Who plays Sova? Bone Cold.
Salut.
Yeah, we went different ways with that, but both of those are impossible. I think that's the bigger issue I have here is I don't disagree that if they could find an IGL that could fill Vac's role, they'd probably be in a better spot. The problem is I just don't think that person exists, at least right now. Not someone with enough experience that you'd be like, Let's go into LCQ and run that. And that's
I'll
the bigger
say
problem I
if
have.
FPX get absolutely drop kicked by Mech, I know who I'd be calling. I'd be ringing them up that second and being like, Angel, you ever fired some recons, mate? You
You're
know some
mad.
lineups, mate.
You're,
Swing
you're,
in.
you're basically being
Swing
like,
in, bro.
if we could just get Mr. FPX to leave his team, like,
No, no, no.
I
To
genuinely
stand
think
in
that.
for one game. You don't think he'd want to go to
But
Masters for one game? Like for a couple games? You went, hey. Then go back to FPX after? It's fine. Don't worry.
but you're talking about Acend, who are not at
Oh,
Masters.
sorry. LCQ champs. Champs is what I was
And
talking
also
about after. Yeah,
LCQ, they're already playing.
they're already there.
And it's
That wouldn't
before
make any
LCQ.
sense.
You forgot your own
They'd have to
fucking
buy 'em.
question.
Yeah, I flipped it around in my head. I got so stuck on it being Angel. I just want to see Angel out of lab, man. Is that such a goddamn crime?
But he did
Hopefully
this.
we won't.
I don't think that's the reason he's not there. But
Yeah.
anyway, we're gonna. I had two. They were both about guild players.
Okay.
I think it's rude how little we've mentioned this man on our show. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Leo is the most valuable player in EMEA right now.
The most valuable player in EMEA.
Yes.
So not even
You could
just
take that
in
however
his
you want. You
role.
could take
Oh,
that
I mean,
as monetary value. You could take that as the way that he plays for his team. You could take that as he'd be the best person to build around. He is the most valuable player in
Incorrect.
EMEA right
Monetary. You said I can take it how I want. So I'm
Yeah,
going
you
to take
can.
his monetary value. Scream is worth more than everyone else in this league's weight in gold, triple. No. Scream
So
is
you've
more
just
valuable
got monetary.
monetarily.
So I can go
There
the
you
other
go.
way then. I personally
Wait, what?
think that.
I've chosen monetary. How
Yeah,
did
I
then
don't
you
have.
get to choose
I
another?
said
Then
you
it's not a
can choose
comparison.
valuable
That's-
the way you want. I'm going to choose valuable in a completely different way. The man is 18 years old. He is someone who is clearly one of the best players in multiple different roles. I think you can play him within any team. I will give you that Scream in terms of branding definitely beats him out. I don't think there's any competition there. If you're talking about Scream in terms of value to his team, I don't think it's even close. I think that Leo absolutely obliterates him in that aspect. So, sure, in a monetary gain right now, I will give you that one. But the thing is, I think that Leo, if I was going to start a team in EMEA, he's the first person I put in the squad. And
All right,
that's
then.
just
I mean-
because I think that there is no one else within the league that can fill the amount of roles that he can, could put up the statistics he can on those roles. And I also feel like every other player, like, for example, Durka, absolutely phenomenal. If I couldn't get Durka, I could get Trex. And that's the way I'm sort of looking at this, is like, there are so many different players that can fit certain roles. I don't think there's anyone quite like Leo.
I don't know, man. I just think it's offensive, to be honest, to just shit on Chronicle like that. It's well,
I don't know. I've had enough of his brimstone icebox. Orbital strike. Wait, where's that gone? Guys.
Okay, listen.
It
If
did
we're
3
talking
damage.
valuable in terms of ult orb per ult per damage, all that sort of shit,
Fuck,
yeah,
ult
he's
per
terrible.
ult.
Ult orb per ult, yeah, the amount of ult orbs you're putting into the ult versus the damage that ult is doing, or the
Okay,
value
so
that
damage
it's bringing.
per ult.
Well, no, because we're not going to be damage per ult. Well, then let's compare a Cypher player. Let's put Nats in there. Oh, his damage per ult's terrible. He gets 0. Like no. But yeah, in terms of the those orbital strikes, I never want to see him use those ever again. But every other aspect, love him.
Okay. Well, we've got our 4. Those are done. My last one, just in case. I'm just curious what you would say. You don't
Okay,
have to
hit me
actually answer it. Coldamenta is the best IGL in EMEA. You can just say yes or no. I guess people can talk about
No,
that
I don't
one in
think
the
so.
comments.
I personally, I think Enzo has some of the
He's
best
not even the
ideas
IGL of
for
his
the
own
game.
team.
He is still an IGL, is he not? He played as an IGL for the majority of his career,
Yeah.
and in 2
I've
different
never
FPS
won
titles. So,
anything.
I
Never
mean,
won anything.
all right. Listen, first team to ever qualify.
Oh, no, sorry. You
First
probably
IGL
won an
to ever
Irish
qualify to
lad.
Masters, okay? First IGL to ever qualify to
How
Masters.
did they
Put some
do?
I don't. It qualified, okay? The qualifiers were great. They were really good. They were really fun. Not a lot after that was a lot of fun, Tom. I'll be honest. I don't look fondly on the playoffs, but the qualifiers. Oh yes, those
All
were
right.
good times.
So Mitch thinks Enzo is the best IGL in EMEA. You are.
I'd maybe say like Angel. We've got Boaster. Boaster, I think.
yeah.
Boaster, honestly, I
Well,
love
on
Enzo.
success alone, Boaster
Boaster
is the best.
has the success. Right now, he's on in my opinion, the best team that we've got in
Mm.
EMEA. No, sorry, statistically the best team we've got in EMEA. In my opinion, the best team we've got in the world. Fnatic right now are my favorite team to watch, and
Fair.
Oster has formed that, and this is something that he does not even get 1% of the props he fucking deserves for. He was just a nobody from UKCS 2 years ago. And he said, no, you remember those days where he was like, I'm just some kid, but I want to be, I look up to
I watch
Angel.
Boaster's streams.
Dude,
I watch
he
him
was
playing the ukulele on his
it was like
streams.
it
I
was
love
like a kid
Boaster's
sitting on
streams.
Santa's lap when he got to speak to Angel. Honestly, it was ridiculous. And now he is the premier. He is
Yeah.
the golden standard
If you
of
want to
what a
know,
good IGL is.
I
Unreal.
I knew that Boaster would be your answer, and my rebuttal was that in my eyes, right now, Coldamenta is the Carrigan of Valorant. He can go to
Okay.
any team, build that team, bring in new players, and make it good. And I don't think there's anyone who does that other than him right now. Now, obviously, it's very early days in Valorant. It's not like Carrigan, who's been doing this for like 10, 15 years, but the fact that he Acend, the original roster, amazing in the first Masters under Coldamenta. G2, probably the best era they've had. Well, okay, excluding Ignition when they didn't need an IGL.
Sure.
Didn't have one at all.
Old days.
Coldamenta getting them to Masters, superb again, and now he's done it for a third time under Guild. So that was my argument. Again, you can take that as you will. We'll add it to the list. So Coldamenta is the best IGL, yes or no? We had Mitch's Will Angel play Yoru. I said yes. He had to disagree. I don't necessarily think he did disagree. What was your second one? I always forget the second one.
My second one was that Ascend will have roster changes.
Acend will have a roster change before LCQ.
Before LCQ.
Mine was allowing Sliggy to leave was the worst org decision in Valorant. My opinion was actually that G2 letting Zeke run away into the world and go and win champions. I've heard some others in the past talking about the likes of Zoms as well. Is there anyone else that you can think of that maybe was an even worse decision? Maybe it's something we didn't even think about. And then my one, which was contested in very different ways because I felt like I left the parameters a little bit too open, but is Leo the most valuable player within EMEA right now? Please write in the comments what you think about any of those topics. And again, throw in some of your own. I know somebody said our opinions on Split. I'm pretty sure we've said that everywhere. We are both unhappy. Please. Don't take Split from us. It's my favorite map. We love casting it, love playing it. Icebox is shit. There you go. I've answered that question.
Here's the best thing. Here's the best thing. I see it coming, 6 months from now. I bet they're already working on it. Maybe
Split
it's
2,
even sooner.
Electric
Maybe
Boogaloo.
no, I think it could be a surprise Icebox revamp, right? Coming up to LCQ. It's summertime, baby. We got Breeze and Icebox.
Split
It's
just
melted,
slams through the
right?
middle of the
No,
map.
it's going to be a drive. There's going to be a skin set for climate change, and Icebox is going to melt, and then it's going to be a different map. So thank fuck. And we're going to raise money for, cleaning up the environment, stopping climate change,
Okay.
saving the ice caps. It's going to be great. And now because it's tied to, climate change and so on, we have to do it. It would be irresponsible not to do it. So Icebox will melt in the coming days. I'm so happy.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, anyway, if you have any other questions for us, let us know. Of course, you can write them in the comments below and just let us know what you think of the series in general. This has been Split Decision, and we'll see you next week, maybe with a special episode. I'm trying to plan something, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll just be me and Mitch again, and if so,